Hello S3, welcome to our fourth media analysis lesson where we are looking at posters and trailers with the view to compare them. Let's start though by thinking about what we're going to do. So if you remember, last week we looked at audience and purpose, form and layout, use of colour and images. Last lesson we looked at persuasive language, and today we're going to focus on group discussion skills and in particular non-verbal communication. Following on from that, we'll start to look at our film trailers, thinking about camera shots and angles, and then moving on to soundtrack and sound effects. And finally, we'll go back to audience and purpose, but this time focusing on the trailers, before planning and preparing for our group discussion on Teams. First though, I would like us to do some unseen analysis practice. Now you'll notice that when it's a practice, it uses a C, but underneath I've written let's practice because it's now a verb, so it becomes an S. Okay, so let's practice the skills that we have learned. What I'm going to do is give you one poster to look at, and I want you to try and analyse it in as much detail as you can. So you're only looking at one poster. It's been broken down to you in the different sections that we've focused on in the last few lessons. And I just want you to type or leave a voice note giving as much detail as you possibly can. So start off by thinking about the audience. Who do you think this is aimed at and why do you think so? Please remember, don't base it on the fact that you may have seen or heard of the film, okay? Base it on what you can see, anything, any kind of emotions that it might evoke, anything like that. But we'll obviously go into that in more detail later. So just 2 bullet points really. Who is this aimed at? Why do you think so? Then we'll go on to purpose. What is the purpose of this poster? Now, we are focusing on film, so it should be fairly straightforward, okay? But don't say, and I know it because my teachers asked me to look at a film, okay? So I want you to give a straightforward answer to what the purpose is and how you would know it. If you just saw that poster in the street, how would you understand what the purpose is? Then I want you to make notes on form and layout. How are things positioned, okay? Is everything in the centre? And are your eyes going up and down, or is it in the centre and you're going left and right? Or have things been moved from out with the centre? And how are your eyes drawn to certain things? Just try your best with this answer and just try and give as many bits of information as you can. Move on to colour then. What colours can you see? And in the context of the poster you're looking at, what might they indicate or what emotions might they evoke? Then you're going on to the specific images and what do they show, okay? Maybe look at the image above the title and obviously look at the man's face. Maybe give some information about what you think he might be feeling or thinking, and then put all that in together to what do you think the images might represent. Can you see any persuasive language techniques? Have they used facts, rhetorical questions? Have they used opinions? Have they directly addressed the audience? Have they used a pun? Have they used alliteration? Have they used... I think that was it actually. Did I say rhetorical questions? I can't remember. Anyway, you can go back to your previous lesson notes to see the different techniques. Have they used any? And if they have, identify them please. And if you can, explain why you think they've used them. Then go back to audience and purpose. So thinking about the audience and purpose, is it effective in hitting its target audience and meeting its own purpose? So you can say, no, it's not, and here is why, or yes, it is, and here is why. So pause the video and go through all of those sections in your OneNote pages now. We're moving on then to thinking about our group discussion skills, and the reason why we're thinking about group discussion skills is because we're going to do a group discussion where we compare a film poster to a film trailer as a pair or as a group. Let's think about the group discussion benchmarks, because although we are looking at reading a text and the text happens to be a poster and a trailer for understanding, analysis and evaluation, the output in order to show that we understand this is going to be a creative piece. In other words, it's going to be a talk. So it's got its own success criteria. Now I'm focusing specifically on levels 3 and 4, but when you actually do your talk, it will come with a rubric which shows levels 1, 2, 3 and 4, okay? So if you're Working within level 3, you want to look at offering relevant ideas, knowledge and or opinions with supporting evidence. For level 4, your evidence needs to be convincing and you need to be contributing ideas all the time. You need to apply verbal and non-verbal techniques, which is what we're going to look at today. But you need to sustain your verbal and non-verbal techniques to enhance communication if you're in level 4. And again, we'll talk about a bit of that today. You need to communicate, you need to use an appropriate register and tone for purpose and audience. And again, the difference between level 3 and level 4 is that for level 4, you're consistent with it the whole way through. And for both levels, you need to communicate in a clear and expressive way. And the only difference really is slightly more confidence being displayed for level 4. Now, I'm going to focus on verbal and non-verbal techniques today, okay? So verbal techniques would be things like varying your vocabulary. Now, don't worry, you don't need to sound like you've swallowed a thesaurus just to have a conversation, but just try and, for instance, not start every single sentence with so, or in terms of, or those sorts of phrases you hear people using, okay? So vary your vocabulary. Try and use an expressive voice, and hopefully, if we can, we will have an activity around the difference between varying in your intonation and using expressive voices compared to not, okay? Varying intonation means the tone of your voice itself changes. So for example, you might lift it up if you're asking a question, and you might bring it down again when you're finishing your point. Hopefully you could see the difference in my intonation there. Another one, which is probably sounds a bit strange to you, but showing that you have listened. And in the pink box, I'm going to go over some phrases you can use to show that you've listened and you've understood what someone else was saying. So for example, if you were in a group with someone called Bob, you could say, just like Bob said, I would also like to point out, so you don't have to disagree with Bob, but you're just adding on to what Bob has said. You're showing you've listened to him. I agree with you, however, I would also add, so again, you don't have to disagree with someone to contribute and to bounce off what they've said, but you need to find nice ways of adding it on. Just to summarise then, so it might be at the end of a sort of natural conclusion to your discussion and you just want to summarise everyone's points or a particular person's points. You can also do what I always call agreeing in a disagreeable way. I can see your point of view, however, I would disagree with you because, okay, you don't have to just tell them why they're rubbish. You could actually just acknowledge them, acknowledge their point of view, and then explain why you disagree with them. And another way of summarise again is I think what you're saying is. So these are just little phrases that if you use them, just help you naturally contribute even more to the discussion and show that you have listened. So we've talked about verbal techniques, but let's move on then to non-verbal techniques. And these are things like facial expressions, hand gestures, eye contact. Now I haven't put in body language simply because it's, you'll be sitting down on a Teams call, you're probably only going to be showing your face, okay? But if you were in a class, if you were thinking about maybe moving around a tiny little bit while you were being really expressive, while you were talking about something really exciting, things like that can be really useful as well with body language, okay? So what I want you to do, and it should be quite a nice light activity for you today, is simply name the facial expression. So I want you to just write in how you think this, basically what does this expression show? How you think this person is feeling and how do you know that? It's also just good sort of practice for things like show, don't tell when we go back to creative writing again. So name this expression and how you know. How is this person feeling? How do you know? How is this person feeling? And how do you know? How is this person feeling? How do you know? How is this person feeling? How do you know? And how is this person feeling? How do you know? And how is this person feeling? And how do you know? So pause the video and do that now. It should not take you long, and it's just a quick reminder of different facial expressions and what they can convey. So to recap then for today, we have looked at unseen poster analysis, which is very similar to what you'll do for your final assessment. We've talked about group discussion skills, but we will revisit this and develop this in the final lesson as well. We've looked at verbal and non-verbal techniques. And next week, we are going to be focusing on trailers and especially focusing on camera shots and angles. Well done, folks.